Hi, welcome to these notes. These notes you can see are titled Factoring Polynomials, especially or more specifically using a GCF, greatest common factor. And now before we get into what does factoring polynomials mean, we're going to do a quick review. Our review is to simplify the following. If you take a look at our three examples, you see that we have a term in front of what we have in parentheses. That does mean to multiply, more specifically using distributive property. So remember, so for this first example, we're going to do a, and we're going to multiply a by every term inside parentheses. So multiply the coefficients first. We have 3, and then a times a is a squared. Then 7 times a is 7a. Don't forget your signs. Then when we do negative 2m, we're going to multiply that negative 2m to every term inside parentheses, so every term to that quadratic trinomial. Again, make sure you're doing coefficients first, so we'll have negative 2, then m times m squared, m to the third. Then negative 2m times 6m, again coefficients first, negative 2 times 6 is negative 12, m times m is m squared. Then negative 2m times negative 1. So negative times a negative, we do get a positive, and then it's negative, or a positive 2m. Again, make sure that before you move on to your next problem that you're leaving your answers in standard form. So alphabetical order first, then by highest exponent. And our first two examples are that way. So when we are working with our last example, again, the key thing is to make sure that you are doing things in alphabetical order with your variables. So when we do 5xy times x, we get 5x squared y. Then 5xy times negative 2y, again, coefficients first, so 5 times negative 2 is negative 10, then xy squared. So it is in alphabetical order, and then by highest exponent, so x squared, then the x. Now let's go ahead and define factoring. Factoring is the process of separating a polynomial back into a product. So let's go ahead and write that down. So again, it was the process, don't write too big, of separating a polynomial back into a product. Factoring is considered an inverse operation. So let's go ahead and write that down. Okay. Sometimes you'll hear me talk about, and you'll hear it talked about as the process of undoing. And so that is really an inverse. The term inverse is the process of undoing. So polynomials, not every polynomial can be factored. So polynomials that cannot be factored are called prime. So this middle part right here, there will be several ways to factor. The approach we will take depends on the polynomial. Okay, that's key. Today, we're going to start by using the greatest common factor, the GCF of the polynomial. We're going to be learning many ways this unit, so this is the beginning of all of our factoring. Now, the directions tell us to factor the following polynomials by finding the greatest common factor. We check our answers by redistributing. This will be our mental math. Greatest common factor, this is the largest number that goes into both terms. So let's take a look at our example 1. So I have 3, so we're going to view 3x and 12. These are two separate terms. So among the two, the GCF, 3 goes into both. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 3 and I'm going to write it down on the outside of parentheses. Then I'm going to be applying that dividing exponents property. So this is some mental math. We're going to do 3x divided by 3, and I'm left with x. That goes inside parentheses. Then I'm going to take that positive and drop it down, the plus sign, drop it down. Then I'm going to do 12 divided by 3. I get 4. And this is my final answer. Okay. Now, the mental math to quickly check my work. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 4 is 12. Okay? Now let's go ahead to number 2. So for number 2, 7y and negative 7. So among those two terms, the GCF is 7. So I'm going to write down 7 on the outside of parentheses. Then I'm going to take each term and divide it by 7, and it goes inside parentheses. So 7y divided by 7 is y. Then negative 7 divided by 7 is negative 1. That's my final answer. I redistribute mentally, so 7y times 7 is 7y. 7 times negative 1 is negative 7. Okay, let's try this again for number 3. Number 3, again, between 5x and 30y. Okay, the GCF is 5. So I write down 5 on the outside of parentheses. Then I take each term and divide by 5. 5x divided by 5, I'm left with x. So 5 divided by 5 do cancel out. Then I do 30y divided by 5. Okay, my answer will be positive, so I'll have that plus sign in there. So 30y divided by 5 is 6y. Okay. Do mental math, redistribute. Notice that we come up with the same answer. Now let's try number 4. So for number 4, my GCF between 8m and 36n, okay, is 4. Remember, it's the greatest common factor. Now, 2 goes into both, but 4 is the greatest. Then we divide each term by that GCF. 8m divided by 4 is 2m. 36n divided by 4 is a positive 9n. Again, that's my final answer. Redistribute. Make sure you did it correctly. Now let's try 5. So for number 5, between 6a squared and 27, again, the greatest common factor that goes into both is going to be 3. Then we take each term and divide by that GCF. So 6a squared divided by 3. So it's going to be 6 divided by 3 is 2, and the a squared gets carried down. 27 divided by 3 is a positive 9. So again, make sure you have signs that separate the terms. Redistribute. Make sure you did it correctly. Now for number 6. Number 6 is my first example where I'm going to have to utilize the GCF of variables. This is going to be the largest variable that goes into both terms. So before we try that, let's take a look at 4 and 24. The GCF between those two numbers is going to be 4. Now I have a y squared and a y, and the largest variable that goes into both. Well, I can't take y squared because there is not a y squared in y, but there's a y in that y and a y in that y. So again, our goal is when we divide, we can't come up with a negative exponent. Okay, when we divide, we need to make sure that we are dividing our variables, and sometimes we might have a positive exponent. That's okay, but no negative exponents. So it has to go in evenly. So notice how this 4y works. 4y squared divided by 4y. So the 4's cancel out, I get 1. Y squared divided by y, I'm left with just y. So 2 minus 1. Then I'm going to do negative 24y divided by 4y. So negative 24 divided by 4 is negative 6. Y divided by y, they cancel out. And this is my final answer. Let's go ahead and try 7. So I have 21CD minus 3D. Again, taking a look at just the coefficients, the GCF between the coefficients is going to be 3. Then look at your variables. The largest variable that goes into both is going to be D. So I can divide a D from each term and not come up with a negative exponent. Let me scoot that up a little bit. And so when I do this, 21CD divided by 3D, okay, that's going to leave me with, so 21 divided by 3, always start with coefficients, is 7. Then Then CD divided by D, okay, is going to be C, and the D's cancel out. Then negative 3D divided by 3D, notice how they cancel out, but we're left with a negative 1. Okay, so we're not going to leave it blank. We're not going to write down 0. We will go ahead and write it as a negative 1. Then we'll go ahead and do number 8. So for number 8, we have 14GH minus 18H. So starting with your GCF, 2 goes into both. So with those coefficients, 2 goes into both. And then the largest variable that goes into both is H. Then we divide each term by our 2H, our GCF. So start with coefficients. 14 divided by 2 is 7. GH divided by H, we're left with just G. The H's cancel out. Then negative 18H divided by 2H. So negative 18 divided by 2 is negative 9. H divided by H cancels out. Now let's try number 9. Okay, so again, 15a squared b minus 30ab. Between 15 and 30, my GCF is 15. That's the largest that goes into both. So I know 3 goes into both, 5 goes into both, but again, we're looking for the greatest. Then the largest variable that goes into both, I have a squared and a. So an a goes into both, b and b goes into both. So that is my GCF. Now again, take each term, divide by your GCF, start with your coefficients. 15 divided by 15 will be 1. A squared divided by a is a. B divided by b cancels out. Then negative 30ab divided by 15ab. So negative 30 divided by 15 is negative 2. The ab divided by ab cancels out. That's my final answer. Again, as these get more complicated, redistribute. Make sure that you're getting the final or the initial answer. Let's go ahead and try 10. So for number 10, I have 16bc squared and 24bc. My GCF, so the largest number that goes into both, is going to be 8. The largest variable that goes into both, well, they both share b, they both share c, and it's going to be just c. Okay, there's no c squared in my second term. Then again, divide each term by 8bc. Start with coefficients. 16 divided by 8 is 2. B divided by B cancels. C squared divided by C is C. Then for my second term, 24 divided by 8 is a positive 3. BC divided by BC, that cancels. And then for number 11, between AB and A, there's no coefficients. That's okay, but they both share the variable A. They don't share a B. So A is my GCF. That goes on the outside of parentheses. AB divided by A, I'm left with B. Negative A divided by A, I'm left with negative 1. Redistribute. Make sure that this works. Number 12, x squared plus 3xy. My GCF here is going to be x. Then again, divide each term by your GCF. X squared divided by x is x. 3xy divided by x. So 3 divided by 1, I get that positive 3. X divided by x cancels. I still have the y gets dropped down, and that's my final answer. Again, redistribute, make sure that this works. Okay, so if we flip it over, we have 12 more problems here on the back, and they are getting slightly more complicated. So we'll just finish these notes the next time I see you, and we'll do these harder ones together. Okay, that's it. Thank you.